Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ryan Suter. I'm one of the senior investment managers here at ShareWise, and we're here this morning with David Brudenell. Now, David is the executive director of Decidr AI Industries. He's been kind enough this morning to lend us his time and expertise regarding the company. So we're going to do things a little bit differently today. We're just going to go straight in with the Q&A. Thank you very much for the registrants that have pre-submitted a couple of questions. Makes my life a whole lot easier. And then I've just got a couple of my own. But again, I would like to remind everyone here joining us today that if you'd like me to ask something to David, please submit it through using the Q&A function on Zoom, and I will ask away. Now, David has held senior leadership positions in public, large private, and startup companies from Sydney to San Francisco. Most notably, David has worked at the frontier of artificial intelligence, machine learning, leading the global solutions and advanced research teams at Appen, the provider of training data for AI and money laundering globally. All right. He has also held international executive roles at large private and public market companies, including Pure Profile, Eclipse, and Flare. David is the co-founder of C2 Investments, a venture capital firm specializing in seed stage companies. Today, C2 has made investments in market research technology, online retailers, and green tech companies. David holds an honours degree in biology and zoology from the University of Western Ontario and participated in the University King's College Foundation's year program. He also has an MBA in finance and international business from the Sydney Business School. So, David, thank you very much for your time again this morning. Now, before we kick into the questions, is there anything you'd like to start us off with?
Ryan, thanks very much for having me, firstly. As you can tell from my amazing accent, yes, Canadian born, but I've been in Australia for 23 years now. But no, thank you for that bio. That's a nice pump up for me. But I think principally I've spent the last several years working in a hyperscaler in the AI space, and those two things are coming together quite nicely at Decidr. So I think let's get stuck right into those questions.
Brilliant stuff. All right. So first of all, for those who are not completely aware, and probably I'm going to benefit of it as well, what exactly is Decidr and how is it different from other businesses offering agentic AI?
Sure. Yeah. So Decidr AI Industries, or DAI, is our new ticker. We renamed in early March. We're the only pure play AI software company on the ASX. So we're kind of leading the way when it comes to the deployment of AI software. DAI, or Decidr AI Industries, we're an AI enablement group. And so really one of the companies that we have within DAI is Decidr AI, which is the core technology platform that allows us to do some pretty remarkable things when it comes to deploying AI within most types of organizations. So to answer your question simply, like, what is Decidr? Decidr is a technology platform that allows businesses to connect their existing data. So think about your accounting data, think about your CRM data, think about your business data just in general. And we connect that into our unique technology to allow you to create AI or agentic AI in your business in many of the places. So that could be everything from dealing with customers on your website all the way through to having accounts receivable AI helping you do reconciliations. And we're taking that to businesses of all sizes, but principally small and medium-sized businesses and we'll get into this a little bit later, I think, with some of the questions that naturally come. But today, agentic AI, which I think it's worthwhile talking about a little bit more about what is agentic AI, but agentic AI is really just for the rich at the moment, or enterprise companies. So we have this remarkable technology that allows us to bring it to everybody, not just the big end of town.
Okay, brilliant. Now, obviously, the majority of parties, are all completely aware of, the Geminis and the GPTs of the world. What specifically is agentic compared to one of those more typical kind of language models?
Sure. Yeah, and it's a good question. Like, most people think about AI, they think about the large language models, or LLMs. And probably the biggest ones in the world that people will be familiar with would be ChatGPT, they would be Gemini, it would be Claude, right? Which those are the front end interfaces of these large language models. So the way to think about it is large language models are kind of like the intelligence on demand. They can access all of humanity's knowledge, and they plug into this new era of software called AI software, which Decidr plays in, which can now make use of that intelligence to focus it right into outputs. So ChatGPT, it is a philosopher, it is an artist, it is a mathematician, it is all those things, right? And it's absolutely so humongous And so now there's this new era of creating essentially AI agents, or agentic agents is where Decidr plays, that can utilize that intelligence to do things, to create action within businesses and within consumers. And so when I think and anyone in the audience is thinking about this, think about the large language models as kind of like the electricity providers, except instead of electricity, they're providing intelligence. And
Yeah.
then you have to, like with electricity, you have to have a light bulb or you have a computer or you have these different things which are accessing that energy. The same thing goes for these new software companies being created, that allow you to do something with that intelligence. And that could be to send emails to a customer, to write a marketing document or a blog. That could be to a multitude of different areas. But really importantly is like that raw intelligence coming through. It's actually very, very expensive to create an AI assistant, or even the next generation, which again, Decidr plays in an agentic agent, because it needs context to be able to utilize that intelligence, right? So if I use a human analogy, you've got a really strong person who can do most anything. Well, what do you point them to do? And you've got to train them to be able to do the task in the right way for that. And so like the LLMs would be the base layer. On top of that, you have the software, AI software layer, and that allows you to create what the world is now experiencing today, which is called AI assistants. And AI assistants, really importantly, and the example I like to give is they are task-based agents, meaning that a human has to tell them the order of things to do, right, to be able to achieve a goal. And a good example I like to give is, today's AI agents, you say to them, book me a flight, right? So an AI agent will be able to go to a website, could be able to then book a flight, but that's a series of tasks. But we're quickly moving on to a new era, an evolution, a rapid evolution into an agentic agent. And an agentic agent is different from a task-based AI agent. What you do is you give an agentic agent a goal, and it figures out how to achieve that goal. So if I go back to that example of an AI agent would be book me a flight, an agentic agent, what you tell it is find me a holiday my family will love. And
Yeah.
so it needs to know a lot of different things to be able
Yeah.
to achieve that goal. And it might then go ask you questions about how many people are in your family, where you've gone before, how much budget you have. But then it would be able to go out onto the web in its entirety and find you something new that you never thought about before. And it's quite a complex, those two questions are very different. Like one is far more complex than the other one. And so that's the era that we're rapidly moving into. And the world today is about AI agents. But that, in my view, will be quickly replaced by these agentic agents, which start to kind of come onto the scene, so to speak.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that clarification. Now, just moving on and diving deeper into what you mentioned previously, why do you think small to medium enterprises have been typically overlooked with this whole AI kind of narrative? Is it purely just an expense-driven decision, or?
Yeah, principally, Ryan, it is. So, when I was at Appen, I had the privilege of working with, I like to say I was the dumbest of 400 people in my organization. I was surrounded by tweed jackets and elbow patches and some of the most brilliant people in the world. And, I got to work on some of these large language models and the biggest AI models on the planet without hyperbole. And, as working through the sausage factory of AI production, what you kind of learn is that there's two parts to actually creating AI that commercially works. So no matter what you or the audience sees on YouTube about creating an AI agent in 50 minutes or less, I can tell you that creating a commercial grade agent is far different than, working in your backyard and trying to create one that'll write you some emails and things like that.
Yeah.
But building good commercial grade AI falls into two investment areas. The number one investment area is actually preparation of the data to be able to train this AI. So remember, an LLM has kind of all the knowledge of humanity, but it's kind of unfiltered and unfocused. So you
Yeah.
need to be able to then focus that within your AI that you build into your company. And that takes your own data, right? And new data that you have to either find, organize, or buy to be able to give it that focusing context for that. And working at companies like Appen, you are talking about 7 figures of investment to be able to just get the data prepared for it.
Yeah.
And so for most companies, that is far beyond what they could afford. And that's just for one agent, right? So, you and the audience would be familiar with, the agents like Salesforce has Einstein and Atlassian has Rovo, and name any SaaS company and they have their own kind of weirdly named agent attached to it. Those cost tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars to deploy, but they're what we would call a vertical agent. And a vertical agent is only looking at the data in the CRM system in the case of Einstein, or in the engineering ticketing system in the case of Atlassian's Rovo on it. So for many cases, it's just for many businesses, it's just they don't have the money to be able to do that. But the alternative is they have all of these like small little AI buttons everywhere, and they kind of are largely underwhelming because they don't have any context to do. So, to be able to deploy it, it becomes an incredible cost for most businesses. And on the flip side as well, it's not like you give these AI agents kind of initial data. They need continual data. So in many cases, businesses and small businesses especially don't have enough data to continually train these agents at least in the current way that they're being built, right? And at Decidr, we have a different way of actually organizing data and building agents, which does away with those two big costs and those two big problems. But really for small businesses, the only choices they're kind of being left with today is kind of a choice that looks a lot like the past 25 years with SaaS software. And, SaaS software had this promise of getting the best CRM system in the world and the best marketing system in the world. But what ends up happening is you end up paying this kind of hidden SaaS tax when you get these software systems because, well, you get your software system out of the box. You then have to configure it to your own company. You then have to link it into some databases. Then you have to link them together after that. And so they continually take maintenance and configuration and tuning. And if we kind of keep going the way that we're going with these kind of individual or what's called point solutions, which means like Salesforce Einstein would be a point solution of AI in the CRM, is kind of businesses will just have all of these AI buttons everywhere. And then we're going to have AI to link it to data and then have AI to link the AI together and so on and so forth. And businesses will just have to pay more SaaS fees, AI SaaS fees, on top of their existing SaaS things, which is a bit of a tragedy if you ask me, because AI is absolutely remarkable in some of the ways it can change a business and can intelligently output a business. But at the moment, we're kind of jamming AI into these kind of messy human organizations, and kind of what we're going to get is what you would expect is kind of very vertically focused AI that are kind of okay, but really don't deliver on the promise of this like amazing intelligence that kind of sits underneath them.
Yeah, so obviously the models you just described frankly sound a bit clunky. So why do you think agentic AI is accelerating so rapidly right now? And other than the kind of vertical and basic nature of the preliminary models, what are the forces that are driving this transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So that AI is definitely like the large language models. Principally, that's what's driving the market forces of agentic AI. And these large language models are continually increasing their intelligence, right? And it depends on which kind of paper you look at or which benchmarking you look at. But like the way I look at it is every 7 months, a LLM is getting at least twice as smart. Right. So, if you remember Moore's law, every 2 years, the processing of the CPU doubled. We're looking at a highly fast-tracked way of these LLMs getting smarter. And really, what does getting smarter mean? Well, getting smarter simply means that the underlying models are capturing more and more data, and so they're becoming more aware, and the hardware performance that drives these models is also improving. So, and it kind of, for the audience, is really important to understand is when you go to ChatGPT, which is a interface for a large language model called OpenAI, is that when you type in your prompt, the LLM does not understand what you're asking of it. Large language models are actually just pure probability engines. So what they're doing is they're looking across 20 trillion things that they can see. And that's why NVIDIA is worth so much money, because you have to they do a probability calculation for every single word that it actually publishes. So, when it comes out really quick, that's a GPU being hit, and it's going, what is the probability of the next best word? Literally over and over again. And that's why, the 10 biggest technology companies in the world buy 90% of the GPUs from NVIDIA, because there's a race that's on to create the biggest LLM possible. And when you in the audience go into ChatGPT or Gemini, when you type a prompt, it may give you, for example, two results and say, which one do you like better? that is, you are training that LLM by giving you a human choice, right, in it. And so yeah, so it's underlying LLMs that are going through there, but also I think, sitting on top of it is the software layer, and humanity is kind of they're slowly figuring out how to talk to an AI. So how you talk to an AI is not how you talk to a human. And
Yeah.
so you see terms like prompt engineering or AI engineers coming out, but really the way to kind of think about that is that's how we are taking our desires and aspirations and how we are trying to communicate that into a non-human thing, which is AI, right? And today it's not sentient. It doesn't understand, like I said before, but it understands language better than any human. So it's about choosing the right words and looking and interfacing with the system in a new way. And to be honest, people are getting better at that, which is helping push things along. And probably the last thing that will kind of propel AI into this agentic future is new protocols. And there's one that was built by Anthropic, which its LLM is called Claude, and they build what's called an MCP, which is a protocol, which simply means that when you talk to the LLM, it knows where to go. So I know when I go to, write me an email, it can
Yeah.
quickly then use an MCP protocol to go into Gmail, right? And that just fast tracks, like, think of it as like its MCP is like the keys to the doors of all
Yeah.
the exit points of programs and software. So you can quickly do that. So that increases context, right, for an AI, which I mentioned before is really important for it to be able to kind of better understand what you're asking of it and know where to go on it. So those are the unified protocol trend is really important, but the brunt of it is these LLMs, which are getting amazingly more intelligent like every day. It's quite remarkable, Ryan, to be completely honest. When we play with some, we have all the LLMs that sit underneath our platform,
Yeah.
and they are remarkable in terms of how much more raw intelligence is coming out of them every single day.
It's brilliant to hear. So, obviously, looking ahead, what kind of businesses are going to be the best positioned to thrive in the kind of next AI-driven chapter? And realistically, who's going to be left behind?
Yeah, yeah. Well, if it comes to like the space that Decider, I'm going to answer that question in two different ways. One is from a Decider perspective, and one is from a business perspective. From a Decider perspective, is where we're at the moment is we've kind of evolved from chat-based interfaces, so that's ChatGPT and Gemini. We are evolving into kind of this new AI assistant space, which is largely dominated by what I would call vertical AI. So that is
Yeah.
a CRM system like Salesforce having Einstein, the example that I gave before. But where we will quickly move is to what's called horizontal platforms, which is where Decider plays. And using that analogy that I gave before is the more context an AI has, the more intelligence its actions will be, right? And a horizontal platform like Decider links up all of the elements of your business. So whether your business is small or big, you will have an accounting system. You will have some sort of file system like G Drive or Dropbox. You will have email. You
Yeah.
will have a website and those types of things. With the Decider platform, all of those systems are connected into our platform, and AI is available to look across those things now in an inhuman way. Now, I'm going to use that word a few times. So James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger like really ruined that word with the Terminator franchise. But let's think about it positively today on it is that inhuman is a good word, meaning that an AI can see all the data for your whole business at any time, and it has perfect memory, and it can do things with that data. So from a competitive standpoint, I believe that at Decider, we're quite a bit ahead. I'd say at least 12 months, maybe 18 months ahead of the market when it comes to that horizontal view and utilizing that horizontal context to be able to deploy a truly agentic AI into businesses. So we're pretty excited about that, and we want to kind of make the most of our lead currently. When it comes to businesses, so what businesses are going to be successful in the future? I can tell you that AI first businesses or businesses that have an AI first mindset, if you are not a business that is utilizing AI today in your company, you will be left behind very, very quickly. And the whole concept of the more AI you have in your business, an AI business will vastly outcompete a human business. And
Yeah.
the reasons are actually relatively simple. The future is not this robotic business that's doing all those things, But AI can do things that humans simply can't. And I'll give you a simple example. We have an agentic agent that is an online sales agent. So it lives on your website. It knows every single one of your existing customers. It knows every single one of your products. It knows the ingredients in those products, and it knows those things better than any human, right? It is
Yeah.
operates 24 hours a day, and it can comfortably speak 172 languages. So, and it can have unlimited numbers of conversations with at the same time. So that is an inhuman thing that a business can have on their website to talk to customers and to convert them, right? And pull them through. Right. So those are the things, and I think businesses will first lean to it. And it's those businesses that kind of look inside their organizations for productivity opportunities. So the example I gave you before was absolutely a productivity opportunity, but also within their organizations as well. And if you think about, your business or the audience as well, the lots of leaders in that business, if you ask for a report, has to touch numerous systems and numerous people before it gets to them, right? And that's always the bane of a CEO, because you always have to wait too long to get the information that you need. And by the time you get it, it doesn't matter anymore in most cases. So that's where AI can come into play. And AI and agentic AI built on the Decidr platform, it can see all those things simultaneously, and it can, in natural language, you can say, what's the status of our top prospect or our top proposal? That's all you have to ask it. And it can pull up the result for you, right? And so for a CEO, that's like a dream that can now start to become a reality, and that's efficiency, right? And that efficiency in your organization means that those people, you might not need to have as many of those people in your organization as you had before, or better yet, those people are now doing things that are far more impactful, right? So they're speaking to customers, they're collecting cash, they're putting more time into projects, et cetera, right, into that business. So it's those businesses who adopt AI more quickly. They will race is a I can't find a better word, but we're talking about warp speed, that they will move ahead of their competition.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. Now, I'd love to just shift the conversation and really focus on Decidr itself. Can you give us a couple of examples of Decidr's operating system in practice?
Sure. Yeah. So we have two main ways that we capture revenue today within Decidr. One is our direct customers, and the others is via our partnerships. So I'll talk to partnerships first, because we're getting great traction with those partnerships, and we have several which are either already launched or are beginning to launch this quarter, which is we're pretty excited about. So with our partners, I'll talk about two, and then we have a new one coming out later this quarter. So we've partnered with one of the largest job boards in the country. So that's called CareerOne. It's been around for 20 years. And why I say 20 years is that they have 20 years worth of CV data. They have 20 years worth of businesses posting job ads. They have an incredibly rich profile, right, of data in their organization. And we've built and deployed, I think, the world's first AI talent agent. So I know that nobody on this call will be looking for a job, that's for sure. But within their organizations, there are 5 million people who every year go to CareerOne looking for a job. And looking for a job is a soul-destroying experience for most people. And now imagine you had an AI talent agent who is looking for a job for you all the time, and that knows your skills better than any human does, but also knows things like there's a new train line, the metro line in Sydney that opens up into Barangaroo, and that's a new employment corridor, which could get you to Barangaroo in the same travel time as it could get you to in Wynyard. So all these really amazing, remarkable things that AI can see because it has high context. And it can apply for jobs to you. What I've learned in working with the CareerOne team is there are many different types of job titles for the same job. And so marketing manager is a good one. There are 320 variations of the job title marketing manager. No human would ever know that, right? But an AI does, right? And it can apply to jobs that are actually marketing manager jobs in that example, that you never would have applied to before. So that's pretty cool. So that's one that's actively deployed, and there are tens of thousands of people using that every single day, which is pretty exciting. Now, on the flip side, we've also created an AI recruiter. And that AI recruiter, because I'm sure of all the people of the business leaders on this call, they have all written a very poorly worded job description because everyone hates doing that. Well, good news, you don't need to do that anymore. And so that AI recruiter talks to the AI talent agent. And so this concept of posting an ad on a job board and then like waiting and praying, for candidates to come through, that goes away with our system. So when you interface with the CareerOne business, and you post your job or you ask for what you want, you get candidates instantly. And those candidates are matched at an AI level, at an inhuman level. And what we're seeing is we're seeing incredible interview rates coming off of those matches, which is really exciting. And so that's one partner with CareerOne. We've also taken that AI recruiter and it's become an AI headhunter within one of our partners, which is called Elmo, which is one of the largest HR platforms in the country. They were formerly listed on the ASX and they were acquired by K1, have gone private. But they have 3,000 customers who are mid-sized companies, and that represents well over 1 million employees on their platform. And a large portion of those employees churn just naturally because they're so large. And so now our AI recruiter is working with Elmo's customers, and now they don't have to wait for job candidates anymore. They're immediately supplied by our technology and via that, not only the CareerOne channel, but by their existing talent pools within their organization and other job boards and other means that they can pull candidates into their businesses. And so we're able to really take what is between a 2 and 8 week period, typically to hire a person, and that gets compressed almost immediately. And what we're finding in some of the data that Elmo has recently released is that in their internal testing is that 50% of the recommended matches from our technology have moved to interview stage, which is a really exciting metric to be leading with and to be starting with, because that can fundamentally really help businesses be able to get good talent, quality talent into their businesses more quickly, and that has a direct impact on everything from, your strategic goals to your revenue goals and, to your customer service goals, whatever the role that you're hiring. So we have well over 10 partnerships now that we're deploying our technology into. And what's really exciting about that for Decidr is that represents hundreds of thousands actually now of businesses who will utilize our agentic AI. And again, because we're a horizontal platform and we can build AI in many parts of the businesses, that gives us not only a really strong defensible position, because when we do a partnership with one of our partners, no one else can do those. And when we put our agentic AI in a business, that allows us to cross-sell our other AI agents into those hundreds of thousands of businesses eventually, which is pretty exciting for us. And then on the direct side of our business, we commercially launched in early November of last year. So kind of excluding the Australian holiday period, we've kind of had 100 days or so of kind of business operations on that. And during that period, we've had nearly 2,000 companies approach Decidr and say, we are interested and we are curious about how to deploy AI in our organizations, which is really exciting, post our launch to be able to have that much demand coming into our company. And that demand is everything from big enterprise companies to small e-commerce companies and everywhere in between. That includes accounting companies, financial services companies, pastry, like you name it, they're kind of coming through. And we've been able to onboard some of those companies and win contracts really quickly on it. So, in our first 30 days, we're able to win 7 new customers coming in. And, when you're looking at our customer design, that's roughly around $100,000 in recurring revenues every single year. So it's really got us an exciting start to the business. And last quarter, or Q3 of this financial year, kind of continue that momentum as all those, as I mentioned before, those leads were coming into our business. And we are kind of going through the process of, stack ranking them and qualifying them to be able to kind of cherry pick those companies who are going to be the best fit for this first wave of kind of agentic graduates, so to speak, out of Decidr and kind of utilizing our technology. So, and that includes some successes with e-commerce companies, retail beer companies, to large online retailers and private equity companies, who I also think are really interested in what Decidr has to offer, because from a portfolio perspective, and every single company in this country and globally, they have an HR function, they have a finance function, they do accounts receivable, they do lead qualification. And so finding those, what we like to call like agentic synergies within a company, is a really exciting thing for private equity, but I think just generally for a business, it's a really exciting proposition to be able to do more with the labor that you have now. And essentially one other thing probably for the audience that I like to talk to as well is, if you put aside the kind of technology and the whiz bang amazing agentic words and stuff like that I'm putting is, business owners have been buying intelligence for well over 100 years, right? It started with the MBA program, when you could buy a manager, right? That was trained in
Yeah.
management techniques. And that then evolved into a consulting firm, which was just a grouping of MBAs and managers together. And
Yeah.
when companies offshore, you go to a BPO or you're offshore, you're just simply buying lower cost intelligence. And so AI is just another, like it's the next evolution, right? That you're buying intelligence. And so what we like to say is with our customers coming in is just to say, well, if you can buy intelligence and it's at worst equal to human, in reality, it far exceeds human abilities. But where would you put it? And so, yeah, it's those direct customers that are coming through at an increasing rate for us. And we're deploying what we like to call like our core agents within those customers. And a good way to think about that would be, when anyone buys an iPhone or an Android phone, your iPhone comes with its core apps, calculator, mail, photos, camera, etc., like the basic stuff that you need to work with. And
Yeah.
so we've deployed a sales agent, a marketing agent, a CRM agent, a search agent, and those four agents could be used by every single business in this country, let alone in this world, right? As they're starting to deploy it. So we're pushing those first agents because we believe and we've seen they have really big impact with our customers.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you very much for that one. So one last one for me, and then we will move on to some participant questions. Obviously, there are going to be business leaders which are hesitant about AI and adopting the change, especially regarding issues with data privacy control. You look at hacks into some of the super companies last week, which is absolutely huge. How does Decidr actually aim to address these concerns?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think like the leading the business kind of owners are thinking about that now. So how we address that is very straightforward. Is we actually federate a version of Decider in our customers' cloud environments. And so recently we announced a partnership with AWS globally, and that's part of that dedication that we have to security, safety, and compliance. Is we actually, every business owner on this call and who watches this will say, "Oh, yes, I'm comfortable with my cloud provider. They're safe and secure." Well, Decider will be within that cloud environment. And
Yeah,
so that gives us a couple different things. Like number one is that we get to piggyback off of the huge security and investment of not only AWS but Azure and also the other major cloud providers. But also because the Decider system sits within the business, is that none of the PII ever leaves that business. And so
yeah,
your Decider platform can utilize all of your PII and all of your confidential information, and it never leaves, which is fantastic. Because once you start to create agentic agents within your company, you are actually creating very valuable IP just for you. And just like you would if you had a top employee and they leave your business, there's non-competes, and you don't let that employee walk out the door with all your IP. Um,
yeah,
I think businesses will soon realize that when you create and when you train and when you supply data to these agentic agents, you are making them smarter and they are yours. Like that is, you're
yeah,
transforming them into your employees, your agentic employees. And so by having our system fully federated, which simply means like it exists inside your cloud environment,
yeah,
um, really puts us, I think, in a strong position to be able to kind of keep data safe and secure. But then from a compliance standpoint as well, so how is my agent going to act, right, to my customers? There's a couple of really good things that our platform does. Like number one, remember it looks horizontally across all the data. So, number one is our agents are far more aware of what's going on in your business than a single vertical agent. So that's number one. Number two is AI is remarkable in the sense that you can point our AI to, for example, Australian law, accounting standards, right? You name it, and or an FAQ of how to use software or your company's values. And in many cases, AI understands that better than humans do in actuality in its understanding of language. And
yeah,
so, with every one of our agents, you supply it with what we call a code of conduct. And that code of conduct, a big part of it comes preloaded from Decidr, and that's all, best practices and what not to do if you're an agent and don't break the law and things like that. So big guardrails, but then you can tune those agents to how you want them to talk. And what's great about our system as well is that it has full what's called chain of thought, which means that you can see what every AI was thinking at the time within our system. And
Okay.
that helps with making better decisions. So AI is not omnipotent, right? It's not a super intelligence yet. So it needs humans to help guide it. And that's why our business is called Decidr, because when the AI has approached with something it's never seen before, it talks to a human and it says, what should I do? Here are some ideas. Which one would you
Yeah.
go? So it gives the decision to you. You get to decide at the back of it. So yeah, so we have a really strong kind of security and compliance and governance kind of initial technological position Decidr.
All right, brilliant. Well, let's shift into some of these questions here. So the first one I've got, do any of your partnerships slash contracts have any numbers associated with them? And if so, why is there no mention of numbers or mentions of revenue spoken about?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So with our partnerships, there's kind of a two-part answer to that. Once we announce our partnerships, like that's a really important step from our perspective in starting that journey with our partners. And in many cases, as we're starting to build these agents, we don't initially know what the outcomes are going to be for those agents, but we have a pretty good view of it. So it's probably, from our perspective, we want to be able to provide, real evidence, and then we can start to size the opportunity as it comes through. So to give an example, we know that, for example, CareerOne has 125,000 SMEs which use its platform every single year, and it has 5 million users, right, with interface with that platform. Now, we know that those 125,000 post jobs, right, and that the Decidr AI recruiter will be available for all of those customers. When
Yeah.
we first start, we don't know exactly what the penetration rate will be, but soon enough, what you'll start to see is you'll start to see growth data and kind of performance data that we'll start to talk to the market about as these agents start to launch. So as an example, I gave that stat earlier with Elmo, and they have 3,000 customers,
Yeah.
right? And in our recent investor presentation, we announced that through partnerships like Elmo, we can expect roughly between $400 and $1,000 per month in recurring revenue per agent, right? Launching out. And so from a market perspective, the data of 3,000 customers, and you have roughly, $400 to $1,000 per month, is like you can kind of choose a conversion rate over time of that base of the customer. AWS is another good example out there. Is our base for a single agent at Decidr, you're looking at roughly $12,000 per year, right, in
Yeah.
recurring revenues. And AWS has stated they have hundreds of thousands of customers in Australia. In actuality, Australia has one of the highest cloud adoption rates in the world. And so, $12,000, there are hundreds of thousands of customers is, I think it's as we start to deploy, the market will be able to see those growth rates. But, if anyone on the call is trying to think about like, how should I look at Decidr and look at the opportunity is, I would suggest like choose a conversion rate
Yeah.
out of those two data points that I suggested. And that can really provide you with some indication of the kind of exciting opportunities that we have in front of us. I think these partnerships that we have, the way I look at it is they give us access to well, now with Amazon Web Services or AWS, they give us access to well over 500,000 SMEs in Australia. And so that's a really large base of potential prospects. And our technology can service multiple areas or needs of those businesses, whether it be sales, whether it be mid-office, or whether it be back office activities. And so it's a really exciting opportunity for us to be the first AI, right, that those
Yeah.
companies choose to put into their businesses. And on top of that, it's a safe and secure way, right, through an existing cloud provider like AWS. But also, what I like to, I think is important for the market to understand is through our partnerships, and excluding AWS because that's most recent, but even with the partnerships before, is there are hundreds of salespeople within these partners, and they are out there selling these AI agents that Decidr has into those customer bases. And that means existing invoice relationships. That means existing marketing dollars that are being spent. And I don't have to go and create all those new beachheads, right? And we're slipstreaming through those partners' existing infrastructure to be able to provide our services to.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Now, just pivoting here, Kisman asks, given the current economic climate and overall bearish sentiment in the market, can you see any opportunities Decidr can capitalize on? Would businesses be more likely to fork out the cost of AI implementation given the current environment compared to previously?
Yeah, yeah, that's a hard yes. That's a hard
Yeah.
yes, Ryan. I think that the current kind of uncertainty or global economic turmoil that is going to fast track the adoption of AI. Absolutely. If you think about a business here in Australia and they're looking at CNNBC or they're reading the AFR, they do not know what's going to come down the pipe one day to the next. And so, as we kind of lean into pre-recessionary environments or just general uncertainty, that means that, businesses start to bunker down and they start to think about, well, what's going to happen if times aren't as great as they were or we're in a bear market. And typically that leaves businesses with very few choices. It's like, I need to shave staff off my business, and that's kind of their only choice. And on top of that, in Australia especially, we have increasing wages coming in. And so there's this like rock and a hard place that many businesses are in. Now, there's a new choice that they have. Like their last choice was just to cut staff and to bunker down. But now they have this opportunity to put in fractionally costed AI into their business. And so if I use an example of like, what's the last thing a business wants to cut, but is typically the first thing to go is sales teams, right?
Yeah.
As businesses start to bunker down, that is the last thing that you want to cut, but it's one of the only ways, the variable costs that you have in your business. So, well, instead of having to cut your sales team, can you look inside your business in other areas where there's role duplication or task duplication, where an AI could do that at a fraction of a cost? Right. So we're talking about, one agent in Decidr costs $12,000 a year. Now, the average wage in Australia is $100,000. So it's 90% less, round number, to be able
Yeah.
to put in something that is at least the same productivity, but in reality could be 200% productivity of that. And so when businesses are now kind of come down with the market, and it could be Decidr, it could be another AI company, they might go, well, for $1,000 a month, I'll give that a try.
Yeah.
And maybe my customer service team is now, it was 6, it's now 4, but my productivity is the customer service of 20. So my customers are happier and I'm keeping them for longer. So there's a really good opportunity that can come out of this kind of bear market that we're going into for businesses and really fast track AI adoption.
Okay, brilliant. A couple of other business-focused questions here. Will Decidr be developing AI agentic modules for components of businesses, for example, recruitment modules for all of CareerOne clients? And if so, can they be sold quickly?
Yeah, that's always the question. Can they sold
Yeah.
quickly? The answer to that question is yes. Yeah, we are through our partnerships moving through most parts of the business, right? So if you think about the business units or the domains of a business, you have sales, you have marketing, project management, operations, finance, logistics, et cetera, et cetera. We are progressively and indomitably moving through and creating agents in all of those areas. As I kind of signaled earlier, we're focused on those core agents first that can have the most impact for as many businesses as possible, but also via partners. So, CareerOne is a great example of where we're getting into the recruitment game. Elmo is where we are all getting into the recruitment game as well as into salary intelligence and performance and other areas. But as we add more partners and as we expand the number of agents within our existing partners, absolutely, we'll be getting into those domains. And I like to give the example of Elmo as example to answer that question about adoption rates of it is, for our headhunter or that example that I gave before, that's around $400 per month or $5,000 per year that you're going to pay on subscription. So if you're going to use a recruiter to hire one person, right, that would cost you roughly between $10,000 and $20,000 in recruitment fees. Now, with our system, you get instant match candidates, of which 50% are going to interview, as the current data suggests, and you get unlimited numbers of those, right, for every job that you have. And so, we're moving into markets where, because of our technology, we have superior commercials than the current option for businesses. And so, we wouldn't be engaging in these partnerships if we didn't think that there was kind of tremendous opportunity for us to penetrate in those bases by just providing a new type of way of running through that experience. And I think, every person on this call who watches this will, probably have a bit of PTSD or sigh when they have to think about hiring someone, because it's such a protracted experience. But that doesn't
Yeah.
need to exist anymore, right? That can be significantly upgraded by agentic technology. So we're pretty bullish on having, on these partnerships and their ability to deliver commercial outcomes for not only our partners, but also for Decidr, because we share the success of the commercial success of those agents that we're deploying.
Yeah, brilliant. Just one more here before we shift to the live submitted ones. Participant asks, what differentiates Decidr from competitors in the space like Relevance AI and Lindy AI? And why does a customer sign up with Decidr versus employing a dev team to custom build a solution with Cursor AI or N8N software?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the last part of the question. So why don't they build their own? Going back to what I said before, it is extremely expensive to build a commercial grade AI. Those two examples of Cursor is what's called a large language model wrapper. So it helps you code better and build better. That doesn't necessarily translate into creating AI, right?
Yeah.
That allow you to create better websites more quickly or better database designs or products. So really importantly for that person that put in, Cursor does not help in building AI. It helps
Yeah.
write software better, and it's called an LLM wrapper. But as compared to Lindy AI, Relevance AI, those are what are called multi-agent systems. However, they're still building AI in a vertical sense. And
Yeah.
so they're a no-code platform, which is what's called. Like, there are engineering comparables called Crew AI and LangChain, which are purely for developers. But Relevance AI and Lindy would be in the no-code space, meaning that people like me, I'm not a native coder. I can go in and I can kind of create a workflow and have my agent do some AI assistant tasks, not agentic agent tasks.
Yeah.
And so how Decidr differs, and I believe outcompetes ultimately companies like that, is like we are what's called a horizontal platform. So we access the horizontal context and all the data of a business without the cost. And that allows us to create agentic AI on those platforms much more quickly. And we don't have to get into what Relevance AI and Lindy and other multi-agent systems, they run into what's called AI orchestration. So once you create your sales agent, you have to orchestrate it through all the systems that you want it to interface with and with other AI on it. Whereas in the Decidr platform, because we're horizontal, the AIs intrinsically know what other AI is doing on that. So you don't have to, draw your swim lanes and connect everything together on it. You can simply give our agents goals, and they work in concert to be able to achieve those goals together. So much faster deploy. And very, very importantly it's that horizontal access to data and the extremely high cost to business, the true cost of actually getting AI to access that horizontal data. It's just unaffordable for most companies. And from a technology perspective, I really haven't seen any direct competitors who are, Decidr is also an AI database company. That's another way to think about our business. And I really haven't seen any companies who are at the database layer doing and deploying the technology solutions that we are. That allows us to be a really hyper-competitive agentic AI company.
Okay, brilliant. Now, let's just shift to these live submitted ones. The first one I've got here is an individual asking, you mentioned that the large LLMs are all under your agents. What is the cost of this and how are you making money? I guess, what is your business model?
Sure. Yeah. So we use multiple LLMs, everything from Google Gemini to we even pulled in a version of DeepSeek in the open source into it and started playing around it. We don't actually actively use that now, but we are LLM agnostic in our business. What's really amazing about the technology, and it's actually called a hypervector architecture, which sounds like it's out of sci-fi, but it is a real thing. I can confirm it. But that makes Decidr extremely GPU efficient. And what that means is when you call an LLM, it costs you money, right? Cents on the dollar for however many tokens you have. But because of our technology and it also being highly efficient, but also because our actual agents are very, very small in our system. They don't actually need to ask a lot of questions. And so we're actually quite efficient. So we have AI software margins in our business that is embedded in the costs for our end customers that they pay for that. So it's included into the retail price, I would say, of that. But as we start to move, of course, for our customers, we're starting to increase the storage in their cloud environments. We start to increase the RAM and those types of things. So naturally, and that's why we believe that AWS is excited to partner with us, because we grow their revenues naturally with these AI using their cloud. But again, that is drastically offset by the huge productivity and efficiency gains that these businesses get, right, from deploying this AI. So the cost to run an entire AI business is extremely affordable. We're talking about less than the average cloud cost that an SME would pay, which is around $1,000 a month. So we're talking like fractionally lower than that to have our full system be operating from a compute perspective purely. So yes, it's actually our technology allows us to be very, very compute efficient.
Okay, brilliant. So we've got one here, which is several questions. So we're just going to run through them one at a time. First one is, with $12 million debt, negative cash flow, what specific measures are in place to avoid covenant breaches, and how will the AWS partnership accelerate profitability?
Sure. Can you ask just the first part of the question again?
So with $12 million in debt and negative cash flow, what specific measures are in place to avoid covenant breaches?
Sure. Yeah, sure. It's a good question. So number one is we just finished our most recent capital raise, which we were oversubscribed for, and we took in $11 million in cash. So as we're starting to move in, so there's that cash position initially that we have. But also as we are commercializing now. So as of November, we are winning customers and we are delivering those customers currently. And so I announced this earlier in the year, but we will see revenue coming through from the business, which will obviously offset the debt covenants for the acquisition of Decidr, which was in the last calendar year. To be able to fund that. So not only do we have direct customers who are providing revenue at an increasing rate for us, recurring rate for us, but we have our partners which are now launching in a scaled fashion. So Elmo is taking our products to their 3,000 customers, CareerOne to their 100,000 and 125,000 customers, et cetera, et cetera. So we should be seeing an exciting ramp of revenue coming into the business progressively as these partners start to ramp. And just to manage the expectations of the audience and the market is, that doesn't mean all 3,000 customers take them on. It is a progressive ramp over, in my experience, 12 to 18 months to get to a penetration rate, which is never 100%, but can get to an exciting percentages that starts to pull revenue into the business. Now, in addition to that, Decidr has DAI has in this side of the calendar year, so in August of this year and December of this year, combined, there are well over 32 million options that are quite in the money. And so one would expect that given our share price is the average price for those options is 25 and 30 cents, that subject to the share price being higher than that logically those options would be converted. And that is roughly $9 billion in free flow capital that will be coming into LV1, which will support that the debt that we have for the acquisition of Decidr. And also, as announced as well, that debt was paid on a 36-month plan. So that debt is on a monthly plan. It's extremely manageable for us. And it was when the team and I were doing the deal, we were thinking about that debt, those debt covenants, and those responsibilities to pay down that debt in line with the growth trajectory of the business to be able to make that sustainable.
Okay, brilliant. Moving on to the next one submitted by this individual. They ask, why prioritize debt financing over equity, given the 89.48% buyback yield and retail shareholder dilution?
Yeah. So there's actually a couple of different components to that answer. I mean, number one was the AWS deal that was announced concurrently with that. We see that as a very exciting and an enormous scale opportunity for the business, let alone not just because of our technology fit and the value that drives AWS, but also the speed and urgency that we have in moving in this fast growing AI space on it. And so the ability to capture capital today into the business to fund that, it was highly important and was a critical component of our logic for doing the capital raise at the time. So circumstances and opportunities made us want to start to do the raise. The second thing is we wanted to, given the exciting opportunities and growth opportunities that we see in the future for Decidr, we wanted to limit that. So we were well oversubscribed on that capital raise, but we decided to take $11 million because that fell well below the 10% dilution rate for our shareholders. And given the we at that point in time, there were early signals, but we didn't know about the turmoil that was coming, right, in the subsequent weeks after that. But we realized that we wanted to do the minimum dilution as possible to be able to really capitalize at the opportunities in front of us to really push Decidr forward, right? Decidr is very much a growth story. I am focused on growth in this business and will be into the medium term. That's for sure, because we have a completely unique technology that drastically outcompetes what's there in the marketplace today. And through our partnerships, we can scale that extremely commercially at low cost. My cost of customer acquisition to land and expand is effectively zero for our customers. So that was really the logic that we were looking at when we did the cap raise, as opposed to debt. And to the earlier question is, we had debt with the acquisition of Decidr, and I think that going to the market and also putting in some strong sterling institutions into our shareholder registry was also part of the equation as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Just the last one here from this individual. They ask, given the 42.99 price to book ratio, what justifies the valuation premium, and how do you reconcile this with negative free cash flow currently?
Yeah, sure. So, when looking at the AI space, like there's public markets valuation and private market valuation in that. And I think given that there are very few, like I mentioned in my opener, that I believe that we're the only pure play AI software company on the ASX. There are a handful of others on other exchanges. But so when you're looking to private valuations, really it's looking at the growth opportunity of these businesses as potentially hyperscalers in the future. And again, the price valuation is only relevant to the time period of which the company is in. We are going into revenue very shortly, and I believe those ratios will change quite dramatically, right, as we move into the future. So again, kind of doubling down on what I said before, Decidr is very much a growth story, and I believe that the current share price, reflects that growth story and the potential opportunity of our technology, right, into it being applied not only domestically but internationally. And given our target market application is most businesses, because of the horizontal nature of our platform, there's potentially a premium that's being applied because of that opportunity.
Now, on the topic of the horizontal nature, an individual asks, with Decidr's vision of horizontal agentic AI transforming business processes across industries, how do you envision agent-to-agent communication evolving into a new kind of digital commerce where businesses autonomously transact, negotiate, and innovate without direct human input?
Yeah, that's a very cool question. I'm glad it came through. Today the world is really focused on AI to human interaction, but the real exciting future is AI to AI interaction. So if I paint a picture for you in the future is, so let's say we have an AI procurement officer, right, in a business that deals with vendors, right, who supply services, and that AI procurement officer of business A can talk to that procurement officer of business B. But those procurement officers know how much demand is coming from the top end, right, from revenue through the door. So the levels of precision that those two AI procurement officers can work to is absolutely inhuman. And that would result in that case, better cash flow, right, free cash flow for those businesses, better customers, better logistics, you name it, right? It starts to really look at that. And that's why also with our AWS partnership, we're creating a venture arm together that is going to invest in AI first businesses. And we believe that a business today, we have HI or human intelligence first businesses. So we think about people when we want to hire. but there's a new class of businesses that are going to come very fast, and we want to invest in them, whereby there's one human, and before they hire another one, they think about what their AI org is going to look like. And when you start to think about, again, businesses in general, what does every businesses from a supplier standpoint use? They use tax agents, they use accountants, they use lawyers, right? They have vendors, they use logistics. As soon as those happen to be AI businesses, you will preference utilizing an AI first business over a human business. And that will start to create this really exciting AI to AI ecosystem that will be very, very hard for any human business to actually compete against because the precision is so high. But we're seeing glimmers of that. I mentioned before in our CareerOne example, like there's an AI talent agent today on CareerOne that could apply to jobs for you. Now, if that was the only thing, that actually wouldn't be a good thing because all that would create is millions or billions of job applications for companies, right? It just exacerbates the problem. But we have an AI recruiter, which talks to the AI talent agent, right? And that means only the best candidates or the best match candidates get to apply for that.
Yeah.
And so that's that AI that exists today in our system. We are actively doing that. And it's that extreme high precision that gets those results that I mentioned before in early testing, where 50% of our matches in the Elmo platform went to interview, right? And looking at the current standards out there of how many applications come in versus interview, I can tell you 50% is wildly higher than what the current standard is, right? Which would be in single digits if you took the total number of applications that come through, right? And those applications are coming from all over the world, as well as people who are not qualified, as well as people who think they're qualified and are not, as well as there's a small sliver of people who actually meet the requirements. So all of that noise goes away. And that's because an AI is talking to another AI in our system.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, really appreciate that exploration there.
Yeah.
Just got a business focused question submitted here. What sort of margins can we expect on revenues?
Sure. So we have AI software margins. So, that is well north of 80 to 85% in our margins. And again, we have recurring revenues coming through for the way that we sell our agents. Some of our customers are asking for some help in implementing them. So there's some professional services that I think will come through, but ultimately that will be a tiny piece, all right, of the overall revenue pie of Decidr. But yeah, I would, if you're trying to class us against kind of other comparables, just definitely think of us as a high performing software company when we deploy that. And that would be inclusive of the compute costs, right, that we talked about earlier, that naturally come with a business like ours.
Okay, brilliant. Another one we've got here is as partnerships and inbound interest demand increases, how do you plan to keep scale up with this?
Yeah. So they are increasing. Both direct and partnerships are increasing definitely. And so I think to answer that question directly is we have an incredibly scalable system, and our ability to utilize and deploy AI is one of our core kind of USPs or unique selling propositions that we have to market. So we're dogfooding our own technology. So I think that's worthwhile mentioning to it. As we start to accelerate, again, we've completed our capital raise. We want to be investing in our partnerships. We want to be expanding into the United States. Like those are the three components for the rationale for our most recent capital raise. And we're investing in expanding our product and partnership teams. So when you think about Amazon, we got invited into their fast track program, which is it's a rarefied air to be, invited in that. Only 50 companies per year get invited into that globally of the tens to hundreds of thousands of startups that, apply for AWS credits. And so we're taking that very seriously and, working closely with Amazon. They've supplied us with, 8 people that we need to have just to support that partnership and to make it successful. And so we are actively investing in those partnerships to be able to scale them. But also really importantly is like we own all the original IP out of those partnerships. So, when you think about Australia and what we're creating in the HR domain, so we have CareerOne, we have Elmo, we have Go1 and the growth faculty. But if you take away the names, that is a job board, an HR platform, a learning and development platform, and a mentorship platform. Is that, looking to the United States as an example, finding 4 clones of those in the United States with the same technology, our technology will allow us to clone that and ship that very quickly in it. So really it's about deal making and finding the right partners for us, to be completely honest. We get a lot of inbound on both direct customers and partners. And as I mentioned before, we spend a good amount of time filtering them to make sure that we're making the right choices. Decider does not have an opportunity problem by any means. It's really how we focus on making the right choices and ultimately executing. And when I built the management team in this business, they are all experts at executing, because like this world and all the AI that most people see, that's all been experimental in the B2B realm. There's a big gulf between experiment and practice, and we're actually practically deploying AI. So we have this lead and advantage, and I want to make sure that we're viciously taking control of that advantage by executing on the back. So expect much more of the same in a good way, of increasing partnerships, faster deployments, faster time to revenue, and those direct customers providing kind of underlying emerging revenue and cash flow. But the really exciting opportunity comes from as these partners begin to launch and scale and stacking on top of each other.
Okay, brilliant. Well, just one last one to wrap things up for the day. The individual asks, how does ServiceNow compare with Decidr AI?
Okay. So ServiceNow would be an example of a vertical AI provider. So they have an AI agent, and I can't remember exactly what it's called. But Service AI, think of it exactly as the same as that example I gave before, like Salesforce and their Einstein product. So
Okay.
ServiceNow is a customer service portal. They have some ERP functions, so they do have a little bit of adjacencies to it. But largely speaking, if you think about the stack of ServiceNow, they're in customer service and in customer management, let's call it like that. Their AI will only reference the customer management data to be able to do that. And so if you're a business, number one is if you're using ServiceNow, you're probably an enterprise company, which is not totally in the core segment of that we're targeting, at least today in Decidr. But you will have to have an agent in ServiceNow. You'll have to have an agent in Salesforce, et cetera, on the back of it. So it's yet another example of what I would call as a vertical AI agent, not a horizontal agentic agent that Decidr would release.
All right, well, appreciate the clarification there. Well, David, that wraps everything up. Now, before we leave the ladies and gentlemen for the day, is there anything you'd like to close us out with?
No, thank you for having me, Ryan, and thank you for the offer. Yeah, I will take it up. I think if I'm talking to the audience, we've just started commercializing at Decidr, and we've had what I would argue as really great early success in the business. We're winning customers, we're delivering on those customers, sorry, winning contracts, and we're delivering on those contracts. And so we're already in revenue for the business. We've already started to book revenue, and even before our full partnership tools and agents launch, as I mentioned in February, they are already capturing revenue in beta. So that's really exciting to know that there's product market fit and that there's early revenues, even that it's not launched the general pool of those potential end customers for that. So we are delivering and executing as a business, and today we're the only kind of AI software company on the ASX. So I think that gives us a unique opportunity in public markets to be able to, as long as we deliver, be able to really show a very successful and exciting kind of Australian-born global success story out of it. So, I will be going after this call, working on partnerships and direct customers and growing the team. So even though, on Friday afternoon, it doesn't stop for us here, because we all recognize that we have in front of us what is probably the greatest transformation in humankind, right, via technology. And I personally take that very seriously, and I take our responsibility to shareholders and the growth opportunities that we're working on that will hopefully eventually, result in returns for them extremely seriously. So we're moving fast and we're working hard over here.
Well, David, this all sounds very, very exciting. So once again, thank you very much for your time and expertise this morning. It's been absolutely brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. This one's been recorded. It'll be chucked up on the ShareWise YouTube channel if you'd like to rewatch or distribute. But other than that, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much again. Cheers.